Hello, Presentation Mastery. In this podcast series, this is next episode. In this episode, I am going to tell you my recent experience. I was reading a biography on audiobooks after a long time. The audiobook was almost 25 hours. I was not sure, but I completed the 25 hours of audiobook in 1 month. I couldn't resist every day to read or listen at least 1 hour of it. So I decided to explain you my experience. This audiobook was nothing but a biography of a legend. And the legend's name is Steve Jobs. It was written by the famous audio biographer Walter Isaacson. I would try to explain in sections how this biography has been organized, and that will help you to understand it. Under every section, there are certain experiences or real life scenarios how Walter explains. I will try to tell, and that will make the this uh, this podcast will be more interesting, and you will also feel to listen to that audiobook. Walter Isaacson sectionized this book into like 5 to 6 parts. First part tells us why he started to write his biography. So there is some initial background is there. In the part two, we start with prior to birth, how his parents met and how the things went into his birth and then later to his adoption. Third part will his childhood, school days, college days, till he started the Apple. Next phase will be the Apple. When he started the Apple, till he went out from that iconic company which he established himself. Next section goes to post Apple. And when he enters into Pixar, that era goes into it. The Pixar till he rejoins Apple again. Phase two of Apple, then his cancer diagnosis, and later. So those are the sections. I will try to go into each section and try to explain or narrate the way the writer has told in the story. All right. So why the biography started? Point one. Walter Isaacson mentions that it was year 1997 or 98. He was called by somebody, and that somebody's name was Steve Jobs. He called and he requested that he want to meet and he wants to his biography to be written. Walter explains that he was very busy in his current projects they were going on. Point number two, he couldn't understand why Steve Jobs wants to write his biography because he was too young, around 40 with 40 to 45 years. Anyway, he met him. Walter explains, whenever somebody meets Steve Jobs, what happens? Steve Jobs would not sit in a conference or on a round table and speak. That wouldn't happen. Steve Jobs would take that person for a walk. That was the first specialty we understand. Same thing happened. Steve Jobs took Walter for a great big walk, and there he explained he wants to write his biography. Walter declined. He gave the reasons that he's currently very busy in current projects, but he told him that later will come to you. And that picture, that episode stops there. But when after year 2000, when Steve Jobs cancer diagnosis came, and ultimately after 4 or 5 years, it was clear that the diagnosis is very serious. That time, uh, Walter Isaacson accepts the offer to write his biography. But he clarifies he would present Steve Jobs as is. That means he will present all his positivity or the great qualities, as well the flaws or negativity or the criticism. Steve Jobs accepted that. Walter almost met hundreds of people, more than 100 people, including his family, relatives, friends, workers, co-workers under it, same as him, above him, his doctors, his uh, people from Wall Street, within Apple, in Pixar, in Disney, everywhere. He met more than hundred of people, and that's how this biography has become very pinpointed at some point. Like he explains in detail, and we understand each and every part. Whatever he explained, we understand it. Probably I felt certain points he did not explain that deep, but uh, that might be the we don't know what we have to understand. Whatever he explained in deep, like he went into the every aspect of it, and even he doesn't stop criticizing Steve Jobs at point and showed his faults as well. What was his side behind the criticism he received? I will explain you with examples. All right. Once Walter accepted the offer and started his biography, the first part came when his parents met. The time is 1950 to 60. We have to understand the political scenario. The Cold War was going on. Two different culture people met in a university. The guy named Abdul Latif Jandali met a strict Catholic background female student uh, in his university, and their love story starts. The strict Catholic father is not approving the relationship. We have to understand it was 1950 to 1960. Things went ahead. The girls, Steve Jobs' mother's father, who was critically ill during that time, he dies, and there was a circumstances he explained that made Steve Jobs' birth without marriage, and they decided already he will be going for adoption. So he moves into California just for his mother moves to California just for his birth and adoption. He explained his mother's condition that whoever is going to adopt him would take responsibility of his college education. So she wanted somebody to adopt in that background people. Once the adoption happened, that means Steve Jobs' adoptive parents adopted him. Actually, the physical or biological mother wouldn't accept the adoption for some time because she was feeling that the the economic condition of the adopted people is not that great. And she did not even sign the adoption paper for a long time, but later she did. So the thing was explained in that detail. Then in the childhood, Steve Jobs was like 5 years old. He explained like what Walter explains his interaction with his age age group when he is talking to somebody across the fence, and the Steve Jobs would explain that he is adopted. There is some kind of deep scar within him. Even a 5, 6 year old person, like boy, little boy, would call himself or address himself as an adopted child. After that, we understand how Steve Jobs was brilliant in his school days. But he would, Walter explains, he was even very adamant, or he has a very big attitude. If he likes something, if he believes something, then he would go for that and he wouldn't listen to others. This attitude he explained in his childhood. Steve Jobs' parent, many times they were called in the school for the behavior, especially when he was in the fifth grade. His teachers called the parents and they told he is so brilliant, you should put him in 2 grades above. It was kind of probably a sarcastic way was telling, because Steve Jobs wouldn't listen certain times and he would go with his own way, even the other students are not. And the teachers were explaining that, okay, I mean, he's so brilliant that you skip 2 levels and go to the next school. Uh, Steve Jobs' parents accepted that. And but not 2 grades. He went for 1 grade above and he went to the another, but that means he has to go to another school district. They even changed the residence for that. And then from there, he went into the other school. There he has to walk for the school for at least 2, 3 blocks because the way his new residence was. So that shows how his mentality was since his childhood. When he was in his early youth, his parents would take him to the religious places, like they were Lutheran. But Steve Jobs wouldn't like. He asked once the father of the church certain questions, and whatever the answer was given, he decided he's he doesn't like that, and after that he never went there. Steve Jobs was in his childhood in a place in Silicon Valley in California. It was surrounded by all technical, innovative environment. Apart from that, there were apple orchards and several other things. After, in his youth, Steve Jobs got attracted some way to a movement called Hare Rama Hare Krishna. That time, the age was 1960 to 1970, and somebody at that youth age got attracted there. Not only he attracted there, he turned vegetarian. This was very, very strange. Why I'm telling this all these things, that explains how his mental attitude or how his personality was getting developed, or what things he used to like it or not like it. He got attracted to that movement, and not only that, he became vegetarian and even fruitarian. It was, Walter explains that all his friends, colleagues would literally tore him apart. They will make fun of him. They would call him names because of his vegetarianism. Because it was so difficult to stay with all of them and be vegetarian. But he did, and he was very proud of it. So that shows that something he likes, then he goes for that. He was such a brilliant mind. He liked to do the technical innovation. Steve Jobs' adopted parents, they were they have a garage, and his father would teach him to work in the cars. But Steve liked electronics more because that was Silicon Valley. And the HP or IBM, those and others are small technological firms were around. Steve Jobs made a electronic product called frequency counter in his childhood in his garage. Not only that, he wanted one part which is missing. He took a Yellow Pages book and he called the HP director. In that era, it was possible. Even a CEO's phone number would be listed in the Yellow Book. He called, not only that, HP CEO took his phone and he offered him the part he was missing for his frequency counter. Not only that, he allowed him to come in his summertime and work on the HP production line. That was a great educational experience for a young guy. Steve was very Steve was mentioning this episode that when he needs some help, he called the even great people and they took his call. So that shows like whenever he wants to go for something, he went for it and he achieved it. Another example has been told in the in his childhood, like when he was doing all these electronic experiments, he created certain gadgets in the home. So the gadget was like this. When you see the speaker, like that, actually, you can listen the songs from the speaker, but it can act as a mic as well in right connect if you do the right connections. Steve created a assembly in the entire home, and it was wired in all the home so that every room has a speaker. Considering that you can listen to songs wherever you are. But later, it is explained that later his parents understood that he can even try to listen in the bedroom what's going on by sitting in his own room. When they understood this, they asked him to dismantle that setup. So Steve Jobs was trying to understand something in the other rooms. He created that technological gadget in his childhood. So that was the experience we understand. When he was in childhood, he met some the geeks similar to him, and that another geek's name was Steve Wozniak. So Walter calls him Wozniak to distinguish. So when we say Steve, it's Jobs, and when we say Wozniak, that means other one. So those were two technological great minds. Steve Wozniak was extremely good in the technological side. Uh, Another experience has been explained that uh, there was some news came that the AT&T was the carrier, they used to do the phones, and it was told that there is a caveat. I mean, how it was AT&T will have two types of phones. One will be local service and one will be long distance service. Long distance means anything above around your radius, and that was more charges for that. There was a flaw in the AT&T router. If you exploit it, then you could call the long distance as a local call. So the catch was like that. And there was some article came somewhere that if you could do like this. When Steve and Wozniak read that article, they just went behind it. There was no internet or any other thing. They went into a library. The library was closed, but they had some entrance and they went in. They found the technical book what they needed. They got all the setup. Not only that, within next few days, they created a product which, if you use it in your phone system, then you could get that long distance call uh, as a local distance call. That episode has been explained in detail. That shows the technical mind, as well as whenever they want to go for something, they would do everything. And it was a great technological innovation. uh, AT&T later corrected that router stuff. That's the other thing. But we understand from the story that they went into library, and even the library was off time. They with something they went in, and then they found that particular technological section, that book, and exactly that point, because there was, as we are today's age, we understand, okay, go into internet and then just search, and then things comes up. Now you imagine the other scenario. You went into a library which you know only few excerpts that something can be done, and then you find that technological part, that technological gadget, which will be like these books in the racks, and then you find it, open it, and find it exactly what they wanted to look for. And they even not only read, but they created the gadget physically. That was the thing. After that, next, when Steve started going into college, they have showed his emotional stress or his emotional fight within himself. He was attracted to the Eastern theology. He Even he was a great technical mind, but his mind was not within. He was not liking the subjects. That's what it was said, because he wanted to learn something exactly. And but in the academic uh, structuring, there will be several other subjects. He thought they shouldn't. He doesn't want to study them. He wanted to study only the thing what his exact interest was. So there was some emotional struggle, and that we can understand from the book. In those days, job Steve went into a summer job in probably Los LA, and there was a arcade. Uh, he was working for a video company, and video games company, and they had a chassis where all the video games was built, and it was a very huge setup. Now, once Steve Jobs started working there, the video company's owner understood his brilliance. He told that, okay, we had a very big chassis. There are so many components on it. If you can reduce it to like compact one, he put a price on that, almost like $700 at that time. Apart from that, there will be some more bonus would come. Steve liked it. Steve understood by looking at it that's possible. But Steve wouldn't have that patience of mind to sit and actually do it. That was the thing of Wozniak. Steve took that idea. He took that chassis and came to uh, came to San Francisco again, Palo Alto area, and met Wozniak. And then he explained the problem. Wozniak agreed. Then Steve and them went over the weekend or over some days, and they sketched it and they reduced it. Instead of bigger components, they used the different chips which were exactly compatible to that, and they made that component very that chassis made was very compact. Steve Jobs said like there is a $700 price, and he shared with him $350. But there was another thing. There was a bonus, because if you reduce it, and that was ranging almost $4,000, something like that, at in 1960, in 1970s, which was a big thing. He did not share that. Steve did not share that bonus with Wozniak. That experience has been explained in detail. Wozniak understood that 10 years later. Even Wozniak went to Steve and confronted him that you shared only this and not that. And Steve was like, quite honestly, he laughed at it and he agreed, he accepted, and he said, okay, you take the point, take that part now. But do you know, that time I needed that. So that was another great experience we can understand from the book. After that, Jobs, Steve was not happy with the college studies because there are several other subjects he didn't like. They were not his interest, but they were part of the academics. Steve thought that's a waste of time. He wanted to get into the exact part. Wozniak was with him, and they were doing certain things, certain small gadgets, and they were very happy with whatever they get out of it. That era was a technological era, and that was the Silicon Valley. They were within that era. They went to uh, one of the technological fair, and they were they had created one computer, working computer, uh, in the chassis. I mean, they did not make all the screens and everything, just on the chassis, and they were presenting their idea, and it was liked by somebody. But he told, like, we want the entire stuff. Like, you build the entire assembly and then we'll buy it. That was the point they started. They decided, let's create a company of them. Let's start a company, and the first product started from their garage, Steve Jobs' parents' garage. Wozniak and Steve both working from the garage, and they created that product and they sold it. They wanted to name the company. I We understand in that uh, setup, like there were apple orchards were there in the San Francisco area, but for a technical company, Steve decided the name of his technical company as Apple, but that was Steve, and Apple started, and then App, from that point onwards, we understand we went into the next phase. In the college phase, one of the another idea was like Steve went to his spiritual guru, and like 1 year he met there. He did travel. Steve Jobs' parents thought, okay, where he is, what he is, nobody knows. But that era probably shaped his personality or spirituality, his meditations, certain things, which is not, they did not went very deep in for that, but it was mentioned. So Steve did not went to the college for the next, but uh, he had that he was having the all the technical things, whatever he liked, that subject he was very thorough. Same thing for Wozniak. Now we went into the next phase. Apple started, and that era was the technological innovation era, as we mentioned, and there were IBM products were there. Uh, there was desktop technologies were very new or almost none, and there used to be the supercomputers or mainframe-based computers. Big systems were there from IBM. Steve wanted to have something a different experience. He did not want. He created. He was envisioning the products. That's what we wanted to understand. The envision or the drive or strategy was coming from Steve, and Wozniak was their technical director and all other crew. How the Apple started, and they uh, started with a first computer. They named it as a Lisa. That was Steve Jobs' first daughter. So he named that first product as a Lisa. And after that, the Macintosh, the second. Macintosh was one of the Apple. And so the next product was uh, named as a Macintosh. We understand from the book the Steve Jobs vision or the experience he wanted to create. He just doesn't want, he did not just wanted to sell something. He wanted a complete product with vision, what customers will like. His Apple products were not exactly the replica of IBM or something cheap here and there. He wanted a complete new experience. He wanted to have his computer screen will be different. He there it will have a graphical user interfaces, the window in window, uh, color graphics, GUI or graphical user interface with mouse, with the sticks. All that was part of it. We feel nothing for now, but during that time, there used to be only character user interface. That means if you go to your operating system command line, you see a black screen and there is only something flickering and you don't see any other thing. That was the IBM computer. And the Steve was giving a totally different experience with window in window, with mouse and joystick and some other thing. Keyboard will be innovative. Everything Steve will go into deep detail. Steve would be his perfectionism was almost irritating sometimes. That's how Walter explains it. He was extremely difficult to work with. He will be macro managing it. But he explains his part of it that he wanted something, a user experience, a complete product, not just something to sell. His point was like IBM, which he IBM or Bill Gates was also his competitor, like his same age. And Bill Gates, Microsoft used to sell anything to anybody uh, as per their requirements. Steve was extremely against that. Steve wanted a unique experience for himself to experience more in detail. Like IBM will take Microsoft's uh, DOS operating system or somebody's keyboard and then sell it. Steve wanted the software and hardware uniquely customized for exact the Macintosh or Apple. That's how was the vision. So today's age, it feels like monopoly, but we are understanding his vision. He wanted the software, hardware, everything integrated, a complete user experience, and that's what we see it. When Macintosh went for the sell, and Steve Jobs went for the presentation in New York in front of shareholders, we see that Steve was instrumental even how the lighting in that room will be, how the sound system will be. Apart from that, how he will present the Macintosh and how people should envision it. The presentation rehearsal took several days, uh, painful days. Steve won't like even the flicker of light less here, there, he wouldn't like it. It will be totally perfect. And that's what happened. When Macintosh was introduced first time, and Steve like unveiled the Macintosh screen and hit the enter. The rolling windows came, the graphical user interface. People just loved it, and Steve's name becomes the legend. The legend was getting born. That's what we understand. So how he started with the Macintosh era, we understand. So every little perfection is including the uh, production line to the strategy to the uh, up to the company's board of directors. Steve will be everywhere and he will be think he wants his way. So that we understand what happens in the first place, what how thing went and why he left the Apple. That's what we understand because most probably Walter points out to that Steve's perfectionism or Steve tantrum, that's what it's called, was too much for a lot of people. Even Wozniak went and he got one some accident. And apart from that, he decided to go to university again to complete. And he was out, and then several others were not able to take the Steve tantrum. And that probably led to the uh, uh, Steve Jobs' ouster at the first place. Because Steve will be instrumental even in deciding the price of computer up to the assembly line, what should be there. And everywhere he would like his thing. And he would be extremely emotional as well as, but persuasive. And even at a time, he would cry in front of everybody. But he would like in his own way. And probably Walter points out that that made the thing, he left the Apple one. Now what? He had a very big chunk of Apple shares with him. So he was well taken care. So somebody could have just like he could have just went back to university or do something the way Wozniak did, but Steve didn't. Steve decided to start all over again. Even he went into the new markets. Like that time, we understand it was a Cold War era, and he went into the Soviet blocs or even Russia to sell his products to find the new markets. Then some after now we are going into the post Apple, like first post Apple phase. Steve started something called next gen computers, and it was still under process. Nothing was that big the way first phase of Apple. When we went into the next phase, so we understand there was a one small shop, we have to call it, and that's called Pixar, and they were selling some animations. And by way, Steve interacted with them, and Steve joined that Pixar. That's what I call Pixar. Now we understand the vision or the product again, because Pixar was creating the animations and the others. I mean, it was local market or some Disney also were their customers. Steve went into it, and it was a Steve touch again. We understand his journey in the Pixar and how he was meticulous again and perfectionist, and how he transformed Pixar this time. It was a partnership between Pixar and Disney. Disney was always animation, but their animation was mostly people will create the cartoons on the drawings, and they will create the movie out of it. Using totally technologically uh, animation videos, that was the new thing, and people were experimenting on that. So we understand up to now the next phase, that the Toy Story 1, that was the complete uh, animation movie created by Pixar in connection with Disney. So Disney story and Pixar was the animator behind them. When the Toy Story 1 went live, it was a mega blockbuster everywhere. They had created inauguration in LA, and Disney called everybody, and it was a mega blockbuster. After 15 days, Steve created a same thing, but with his technological wizards. And who were his team or his friends? Larry Ellison, Bill Gates, boss of Helvet Packard, and other things. Those were used to be Steve's friends. They came to that show. All the technological, Silicon Valley technological people came to the show to see the Toy Story. And it was showed them that movie is created by Pixar and distributed by Disney. The 15 days back, the picture was a Disney movie, but after 15 days, Steve Jobs was able to show the people that it's a Pixar movie and just marketed by Disney. It became like that. And from that point, there was no point of return. Like Steve Jobs just went ahead and again. Pixar become like again another legend was being born. And even it was under Disney, but because Disney wanted to keep it with them, but we understood now the partnership. It was a perfect partnership, like the technological vision and the uh, Disney's movie vision. Now the third phase starts, that Apple is reeling, the big company is reeling. It was around 1995. The desktop revolution, what Steve Jobs started with Apple phase one, now that was at the sinking to the bottom, because what are the board of directors which who make the departure of Steve at the first phase, now they were not able to carry the legacy forward. Steve was called back again. It was a very emotional decision, and we understand very clearly if you listen those episode in the audiobook. Steve accepted that, like, it was his emotional struggle, we understand, because the Pixar was running perfectly fine, and there was such a big career was there. because Toy Story, after Toy Story, there was Bugs Life and uh, Toy Story 2, those all the things were coming up. And Pixar was the hand behind Disney. But they called back in Apple. Now here, like Steve come in, go, like we understood. And then Steve decided he'll come as an intermediate. So that's why the I came. Steve Walter explains where is the I part of it. The one of the explanation of I is intermediate. He came as an intermediate director, but and what he is going to have a compensation $1, and he will not take any stock option as well, because Steve wanted to make sure that he's coming to Apple because of his emotional drive, because of his emotional attachment, because he wants to make his first baby like go up. And but he doesn't want to show the people that he came for the money, because Apple means if he goes up, it will become like $1 billion thing. He's not going to take the stock options and salary $1. On that condition, he came in, and that made him to use his tantrum again. He almost took all those directors away and put his people. Who were those? In his board, there was Larry Ellison, the boss of Oracle. Then several other wizards in the Silicon Valley. He made them come into the board so that Apple board become complete. And even the title was I for Steve, but he was running everything, including, as usual, from the uh, hardware part of it, software part of it, to assembly line, to the distribution, to inventory, everything. So we understand Apple to how it came, and how it doesn't came, it came decisively. This time Steve was maintaining two things. He was Pixar as well as Apple, and he was both instrumental in both places. So we understand that era. Here we understand the first medical part. Like Steve got kidney stones, and there was some sickness. I think that time by some way he called for the writing biography. I don't know what went through his mind, but that was the first time he wanted to write the biography. And it was a kidney stone diagnosis for him in 1998 around. So Apple Phase 2, from the understanding of Pixar, the movie, and in the computer. So again, Steve Jobs' vision of complete customer experience was widening. He wanted to have a music, movies, computer, graphical interface, everything. He wanted to have experience, all the wizards around it. That led to create iTunes, and then everything you will buy from there. Like all your music will come from there, and iTunes won't go for anything else. Uh, it was explained that Macintosh 2 was going into the product line, and the floppy drive. I think nowadays people won't even understand what is the floppy drive. The desktop has a floppy drive, and it was a CD drive. Steve didn't like the design, and for that floppy drive design, he delayed the launch for almost 6 months, because he wanted to get a new one. Uh, because he wanted to have like the floppy drive will become like a music, so people will play music, burn videos, create videos. All that vision was there, which we later understood how the normal consumers understood later how that thing comes. So after that, during that time, Steve decided like Apple uh, should be sold by their own franchise. Generally, the idea was the computers will be sold by the big ticket company like Circuit City or Best Buy or service merchandise, something like that. Steve wanted not them, because he thought that somebody will sell the uh, IBM PC or Dell PC on behalf of Macintosh. He doesn't want that. So he wanted person to get a complete uh, Apple experience. So they decided to go for the showrooms. And even there, we understand the Steve's meticulous, uh, like a going into the macro management. Like he wanted to how the setup of that showroom. In from there, Steve was giving his opinion. Not only that, he was spending hours on that. Like how should be the layout, how the lightning, how the people came, what they should see, and how they will feel the difference. So that we understand. So each and every phase. Apart from that, how the inventory should be maintained. The just-in-time inventory concept is there, but that was for manufacturing. Steve bought it for Apple because he thought that Apple's inventory is kept like a is lying, then people sell it for whatever. So he will make sure that as long as we have the orders, that's how the manufacturing will take place. Good or bad, I don't understand, but that's how he was instrumental, and it worked for Apple. Apart from that, he stopped resell, like how the Dell companies will instead of the using certain chips, they will use different chips and then resell it. He stopped that for Apple because he wanted Apple should be sold the way they sell it, the original company sells it. Then including chips like Intel chip or which chips to go in, Steve will be instrumental in everything. Uh, so after 2000, the dot-com was burst and Apple prices went down. But during that time, Steve was able to create iTunes and some other products, iPods. So those were coming and those were selling uh, less than his computer sale was less, but the iPod and the music store that still went well. There we understand like Steve Jobs' fascination about the Beatles, and uh, he wanted to sell their music in the as a exclusive item in the iTunes. That portion we understand. So when we are in the iTunes iPod phase, that time his cancer diagnosis came, and we understand Steve's like a biggest mistake was he didn't go for the traditional treatment. Like he should have gone for the chemotherapy or some other uh, therapy was established at that time. Instead of that, he went for naturography. I don't know why. And those 8 9 months he lost. Uh, so we understand his cancer struggle, and he was has to go away from the workplace, but he still maintained his presence. Like he will guide. His guide was always there, and the Tim Cook was his substitute, and he became the next CEO after him. Tim Cooks was another guy from Compact. Steve meticulously chosen and brought in, and then he became the his ops operation head, and then later his uh, exact backup when he was away from the medical leave. Post diagnosis phase was the ones actually the flagship products of Apple went in. The Apple we see that today's Apple office, that round, that was all Steve's vision, like how people come in and how the customers will look it. That vision was started with one single showroom. And after that, today's Apple office, we see that entire oval or entire circle. That was the vision was created in his time, just with a showroom. The iPhone, that was the flagship product with a macro technology came in. And Steve was very instrumental in choosing the chips, the software and the hardware. It should have been a complete experience. He will be always behind that, which we understand now, but that was Steve's concept. So all those concepts we understand now are the desktop revolution, uh, the graphical revolution, then experience. That means using the mouse or other than keyboard, whatever we see. Then the music and music integration with the laptop or the movie creation or DVD creation, those things, all those visions were Steve's, uh, including uh, uh, including the macro technology which later came. And we understand everywhere Steve touch, but it was Steve tantrum as well. So here we understand the Steve tantrum, like Walter went in and explains in detail. Like he explains that Apple company, when Apple bounced back in phase two, they offered him uh, bonus. So what Steve wanted, he asked for a plane, a private jet for family vacation. But when the private jet was given, Steve was critical in what should be the color inside the cabin, how the cabin door should be. That we understand at least 10 minutes of narration on that. Like whenever was the jet was delivered, he wanted all those changes done. Uh, and we understand that was suggested by his another friend, Larry, who is the Oracle boss. Um, Steve's friend circle was very distinctive. Like Larry, Bill Gates, all everybody was his in his friend circle. Uh, all the tech CEO, even the Google people, they were in his team in that time. Uh, so, but Steve Tantrum, he will not use a license plate on his car. He has a Mercedes, but he will not use the license plate because he will take the fine if he caught, but he will not use the license plate. Next, he will not park in one parking space. He will park within. There will be two parking spaces. He will park in between, and those two places will be the handicap parking, and he will park the cars in between always. Even he get a fine or whatever, but that's how he will do it. So those were like Steve tantrum. We understand like uh, certain times Walter tells that he asked a question. Walter asked question to Steve directly. Don't you feel you are too cruel in grilling for such a small things with your coworkers? And Steve said yes, because he felt that's the right way to do it. And he is he can go to any extent uh, to make things happen because he pinpoint that he doesn't want to do like that. That means he was pointing to Dell or IBM. Whatever they are doing, we will not do it. We will have the complete experience. Uh, that's how Steve was. So we understand all those small things, but how his personality was, or how Steve was, apart from legend, how Steve was as a person. That's what we understand. Other than that, his family thing is explained. Like Lisa was his first daughter. He first declined the paternity, but later accepted it, and so many other things. Probably that came from his own past experience or some trauma he might have received in his childhood. After that, uh, apart from that, not much has come about his personal stuff. Mostly, Steve's biography is about his work, and that was more than that itself took 25 hours. So I agreed with Walter that okay, I mean, he might have to add some 10 hours if he wants to go into other part of it as well. Post diagnosis or post diagnosis era. So iPhone came. There is one catch that iPhone 4 had a glitch. Now we don't understand whether it was some kind of a competitor thing or how, we don't know. The glitch was like that. The out of 100 calls made, the iPhone 4 may drop few, like two, three, four drop calls can be dropped. There was a glitch in the antenna. Uh, when we are explaining the flaws or negative part, that's what that this is another point. Steve understood that, like if you go with that flaw, then there will be problem. But Steve made a cautious decision that out of 100, one or two calls dropped. Let's go for it because he should have stopped the uh, launch of iPhone 4 because this glitch was understood before going into the launch. Uh, that it can drop because of that faulty antenna design. It can drop few calls, but still Steve went ahead with it, and so that portion is explained. Steve was ill; he was on medical leave, but he had to make that decision, and he made it. Like iPhone 4 went with that glitch, and later it was corrected. So we understand that. After that, like around 2010, President Obama was supposed to. Some people wanted to have a meeting with President Obama and Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs again was very sick during that time. So president came to visit him, and the time was first initially time was decided like 15 to 20 minutes, but Steve said it will be too less. If he can give me like 45 minutes to hour, then only I would like to meet. Otherwise, there is no point. And president agreed to that. That meeting was very fruitful. Steve explained that we need to do the things from the education. Like he explained, the touch board. Uh, he explained the technology. Like in the schools, people write on the chalk and the blackboard. Instead of that, it could be entire digital experience. Like instead of teacher can touch it and then screens can come like how we see on the computer desktop, like how our PowerPoint brings the screens that they can do on the using the touch, and then entire blackboard will become like a digital experience. That was concept of Steve, and President Obama agreed it and implemented it. Like around 2012, we see almost entire nation, all the schools became digital. Like there were no blackboards, but entire digital experience. That was another Steve's vision. I would say I still felt I might have forgot to tell few experiences from the book. It was 25 hours, grueling thing, if you want to, but it was such a, uh, I would like, every day I would feel like, okay, what happened next? What happened next? I would listen every day more than hour, and I could complete in like within 1 month. It was a wonderful book, and I'm trying to make a 10-15 minutes of podcast out of this, but I don't think I can make entire book in 10-15 minutes unless I can only summarize in 10-15 minutes, and then we have to go with the particular scenarios that maybe I will put into different parts. So this is a one. This is everything in one, but I will try to make it into uh, multiple parts. I hope you would also get interested in listening the book uh, Steve Jobs from Walter Isaacson, which is available on audiobooks. Thank you.